You know what's strange? We obsess over boomers and their real estate. We analyze millennials and their avocado toast. Gen Z and their side hustles get entire think pieces. But there's this one generation sitting quietly in the middle, handling money in the most unusual way possible, and almost nobody talks about them. Generation X, born between 1965 and 1980. They're the coworker who quietly built more wealth than most millennials can imagine, yet lives like they're one paycheck away from disaster. The uncle with $50,000 in savings who still refuses to replace his 15-year-old Toyota. The friend who drops $500 on concert tickets but uses coupons at the grocery store. And here's what no one tells you: their money psychology is completely different from every other generation. And it all traces back to one specific moment in economic history, one moment that rewired how they think about money forever. Picture this. It's 1983. You're 10 years old, standing in a bank while your dad deposits his paycheck. Same company he's worked at for 15 years, same steady amount every 2 weeks. The teller knows him by name, he's got a pension. A savings account that actually earns interest. A mortgage that'll be paid off in 12 years, right on schedule. Everything makes sense. Work hard, save money, retire comfortably. The formula works. Now fast forward to 2008, you're 35 years old, you followed the formula, you did everything right, and suddenly your 401k is cut in half. Your home value collapses. You're secure, company starts laying off people who have been there for 20 years. The formula was a lie. That betrayal shaped every financial decision Gen X would make for the rest of their lives. Here's the first weird thing about Gen X and money. They're simultaneously the most anxious about retirement and the most consistent savers. According to the 2023 Transamerica Center for Retirement Studies, 70% of Gen X says they're terrified about retirement, yet they also have the second highest 401k contribution rates of any generation. They don't believe it'll work, but they do it anyway. Psychologists call this defensive pessimism. You assume everything will go wrong, so you prepare obsessively just in case it does. It's exhausting, but for Gen X, it's survival. And honestly, their paranoia makes sense. They watched pensions disappear, they graduated into recessions, they bought homes right before crashes. They're not pessimists, they're realists who have been burned too many times. Now let's talk about something Gen X invented long before millennials gave it a cute name: the side hustle. Federal Reserve data shows Gen X has higher rates of self-employment and secondary income streams than both boomers and millennials. But here's the twist: most of them still keep their day jobs. They're not trying to escape the 9-to-5. They're building backup plans while keeping the main door open. Your Gen X neighbor isn't flipping houses because they love real estate. They're doing it because they watched a colleague walk out with a cardboard box after 20 years of loyalty. It's 1995. You're watching your mom's company downsize. People who have worked there since before you were born are suddenly unemployed at 50. No warning, no safety net, just gone. That image burned into every Gen X brain. Never depend on a single source of income, not because you're entrepreneurial, because you're scared. That's why they have the Etsy shop, the consulting gig, the rental property. It's not ambition, it's insurance. Here's something that confuses marketers. Gen X will job hop without hesitation, but they're incredibly loyal to brands. An Adobe study found Gen X is 34% more likely than millennials to stick with brands from their youth, even when cheaper options exist. They'll quit a Fortune 500 company via email but drive across town for a coffee shop where the owner knows their order. They have zero loyalty to institutions and intense loyalty to people and products they trust. The psychology is simple. Institutions betrayed them. People, at least sometimes, didn't. When a corporation betrays you, you get a severance check and a form letter. When a person does, you can confront them. So yeah, they still buy the same jeans, listen to the same bands, and use the same brands they loved in high school. Not because they're stuck in the past, but because those things didn't lie to them. Now here's where Gen X gets really interesting. They save aggressively, but they also pioneered spending on experiences. Eventbrite found Gen X spends around $3,000 a year on concerts, travel, and live events, more than any other generation in actual dollars. They're financially paranoid and experientially extravagant at the same time, and it's driven by the same belief. Systems can't be trusted, stuff can't be trusted either. Your house can go underwater, your car loses value. Your possessions don't matter when the economy collapses. But that Pearl Jam concert in 1994, no one can repossess that memory. They figured something out early. In an unstable economy, experiences offer a better return on investment than things. You can't lose memories in a market crash. Now let's talk about Gen X and financial advisors, because this relationship is complicated. Data from Sara Lee Associates shows Gen X is the least likely generation to use traditional financial advisors. They prefer to research and manage everything themselves, yet they're also deeply anxious about getting it wrong. They don't want help, but they're terrified of mistakes. Gen X grew up when self-education actually worked. They believe you can learn things from books, spreadsheets, and trial and error, so they read financial books. They build spreadsheets. They manage their own portfolios, but they also watched what happened when their parents trusted experts with pensions. So they verify everything, double-check advice, and trust nothing without doing their own homework first. It's not arrogance, it's self-defense. Here's a stat that surprises people. According to Experian, Gen X carries the highest total debt of any generation, but they're also the most strategic about it. They'll take a $400,000 mortgage but refuse to carry a $2,000 credit card balance. The difference is control. A mortgage is predictable, fixed payment, clear timeline. Credit card debt is chaos. They watched consumer debt swallow people whole in the 80s and 90s. University of Michigan research shows Gen X witnessed unprecedented debt growing up and then saw the consequences in 2008. The lesson wasn't never borrow. It was only borrow what you can map to completion. So they'll leverage debt for assets, real estate, businesses, strategic investments. But financing a couch or charging a vacation, that's the slow death debt, and they know it. One last thing that seems old-fashioned but is actually brilliant: Gen X keeps paper records. AARP found 61% of Gen X maintains physical copies of important documents compared to just 34% of millennials. They're not bad with technology, they built the internet. They just remember when systems failed, records disappeared, and digital promises vanished. They trust technology most of the time. They trust paper all of the time. It's redundancy by design. Digital banking app, yes. Paper statements, also yes. Cloud storage, sure. Fireproof safe, obviously. It sounds excessive until you've lived through multiple system failures. So here's what Gen X money psychology really shows us. They're not confused. They're not contradictory. They're adapted to an economy that promised one thing and delivered another. They're financial survivalists with retirement accounts. They trust nothing, prepare for everything, and keep going anyway because what's the alternative? Remember that kid in the bank in 1983 learning that hard work equals security? They learned the lesson. They just also learned the rules can change at any moment. So now they play the game, but they never forget it's rigged. If this resonated, drop a comment about money habits you've noticed in yourself or people around you. And if you want more psychology behind money behavior, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Your money habits aren't random, they're responses to the world that shaped you, and honestly, Gen X's responses make perfect sense.